Welcome to the podcast, Mr. Rosenberg. Could you introduce yourself to us?
Thanks for having me. My name is Matt Rosenberg. I teach at York High School, and I take care of the Nubble Lighthouse for the town of York as well.
It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Thank you.
So we have a bunch of questions to ask you about your jobs and what you do at the Nubble, so we could get right into that. So the first question we have is, what type of jobs do you do at the Nubble?
Geez, I do everything at the Nubble practically. Probably the biggest job I have is that I have to mow the lawn on the island. It's a super big job, takes like 6.5 hours. I also do all the maintenance on the building over there. Big construction projects we hire out, but for the most part, I take care of like all the day-to-day maintenance items. I also take care of Sawyer Park, which is where everybody can stand and look at the lighthouse and park. There's a gift shop in there as well, and I do maintenance and run errands for the gift shop all the time. I take care of most of the gardens in the park too, and I pick up all the tourist trash, of which there is a whole lot.
Second question here. How did you end up working there? Like, what's kind of the origin story behind how you got there?
You know, it is like the least exciting origin story ever. I hadn't worked in the summer for a couple of years because I'm a teacher and I've always had summer jobs, but for 2 summers I didn't. And my wife kind of wanted me to get back to work because she was tired of having me around the house all the time and trying to entertain me. So she actually saw this in the newspaper, and it was an ad in the newspaper to take care of the Nubble Light. And so I applied, and I was surprised that I got a call for an interview, but they interviewed 12 people, which is, I think, a crazy interview process, but they said they had over 65 applications. And I got called back for a second interview, and they interviewed 3 people. And I was amazed to get the job. I didn't think I had a shot. I was already, I think, 38, and it's a really physical job, so I thought they'd probably go with somebody younger. But it was kind of amazing, and I got the job, and they told me what the job would be, which was only about a third of what I actually do in the course of the job. So just last year, actually, I had to rewrite my job description to be more accurate to what I actually do, and it got way longer.
So what's your overall favorite part of the job?
My favorite part of taking care of the Nubble is actually all the people that I get to meet. It's kind of crazy, all the people that I've gotten the opportunity to talk to. I've talked to like a lot of like local news people. I've met a lot of artists and people who are really excited about the lighthouse. I've got a really interesting project coming up in the next week, which is through PBS in Boston and Yankee Magazine. They're sending somebody out to do a whole episode on York and the Nubble, with me taking care of the lighthouse at the center of it. So like just all the opportunities and people that I've gotten to meet over the years has been like totally unexpected for a maintenance job.
Yeah. All right, so have you ever stayed there overnight, and do you have any stories about staying overnight there?
So I did stay there overnight a couple of years ago. The guys who do construction over there, we've hired the same company, JB Leslie, for the last 6 years of projects. So they're out there for, between 4 and 8 weeks every day, all summer long, doing like the big exterior projects that we have to do. And so they really wanted to stay out there, and the only way that my boss would let them stay out there was if I was there with them. So I went out and stayed out there with them. And we had a great time. Like, we had a barbecue. It was super fun, and tried to stay out of everybody's view because there'd be a million calls to the police about somebody having a barbecue on the Nubble. And so we slept out there, and it was a beautiful night, kind of like full moon night, but it was not at all spooky, which I was a little disappointed. I've been out there after dark before, like this time of year, November, when it starts to get dark really early, and I'm trying to wrap up work, especially on the Christmas lights. And like, for such an old house, it has 0 spooky vibes. And it was even a house that people thought was cursed back in the 1800s because a number of people died there. And when we got to the 20th century, I think the conditions of living out there got so much better that people stopped getting sick and dying. But despite all that, zero spooky vibes at the Nubble, which is kind of weird.
How often do you work with like other people, and like do they like help you out or kind of do their own thing if you do work with other people?
So one of my primary duties is to coordinate with people who do the jobs that I don't do, like electricians, the people who do the big exterior preservation projects, the guy who designed and built the electric tram that goes back and forth. And so I do spend a lot of time communicating with them and coordinating with them, and even in some cases bringing them back and forth. Last week, the Coast Guard was out there working on the lamp, and so I got up early in the morning before school. I got out there at like 5:30 in the morning and was helping them run equipment back and forth before school started. So I spend a ton of time coordinating with other people, which is kind of cool because otherwise there are not a lot of visitors on the island, so it can be kind of lonely out there. But having other people out there working is fun.
So when do you go there to work? Because obviously you're a teacher too. Do you go before or after school, or do you save it for the weekend?
So in the summer, I am out there. I'm on the island probably like 3 days a week, at least for part of a day. But during the school year, I work between 10 and 15, sometimes 20 hours a week outside of school, depending on what the job demands. And my goal is to do a weekend day and one weekday afternoon after school. It's really not that hard in the spring, especially because I'm excited to be out there. But in the fall, as I'm trying to wrap everything up for the winter after a long season, and the days get really, really short, it's tough to go out there and know that you're going to wrap up your workday in the dark. So November is not my favorite time of year.
Yeah, my next question was, how long is the season? But it sounds like you do it all year round.
It's almost all year round. When I started, I would wrap up right at the Thanksgiving weekend, and I would begin usually at the beginning of May. But last year, I started at the middle of the end of March, and I didn't have my last day of work until second week of January. So it's become a really long season, in part because we have more visitors than ever who visit in the fall and the spring and the winter. So if a lot of people are there, then there's a need for me to be out there doing things.
This is the final question, but is there ever like too much going on at the lighthouse or just in your life for you to like manage like teaching and like working on the lighthouse and all that?
That's a pretty great question, Silas.
Thank you.
I would have to say that right now I'm living in that moment where it's like too much, because I have a lot of things going on at school. I'm teaching 4 different classes. This podcasting class is a brand new class, which means I'm building it. I have a plan, but I'm building it as we go, so it's a ton of work. And the demands of the lighthouse are a lot right now. But that said, I know that like it's going to be coming to an end in a couple of months, and I'll be able to kind of regather myself. But yeah, sometimes it's a lot of balance. And even in the summer, there are times when there's so much going on at the lighthouse or in the park that I can't do stuff in the park, and I have to like kind of shuffle my day and punt and head over the island and start working on other projects rather than the things I wanted to do, because there's a million people around. So it can be a little hectic sometime, but it's worth it.
All right, well, thanks for coming on the podcast, and it was an interesting interview with a interesting job too. It was a pleasure to interview you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. This is fun.
It's always looking nice too, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
I really appreciate that. We work hard for that. Thanks.
All right, well, thank you everybody for listening, and catch you in the next one.